1940s. The Civil Aeronautics Board authorizes new airline service for 2 East Coast aviation companies. 40 years later, they will join into one of the largest airlines in the United States. Over the next 4 decades, Piedmont Airlines and All American Airways, later known as Allegheny Airlines and then USAir, create a history and culture that affect the lives of thousands of employees and millions of passengers. As we see each airline's similarities and differences, we must appreciate not only our own accomplishments, but those of others as well. Those that have made Piedmont and USAir ascend into the lofty heights of aviation history.
Our first fleet was 3 DC-3s, 2 of which we owned, and the third one we leased. I well remember getting those first 2 DC-3s. Bud Gilley, one of our original pilots, and I went to New York and looked the airplanes over and decided they were good opportunity, well maintained, good shape, ready to go on the line. So he flew one back and I flew the other one back. In formation.
It was February 20, 1948, when the enthusiastic Tom Davis and a handful of family members, Piedmont personnel, and state dignitaries made history with a direct flight from North Carolina to the Ohio Valley. It had been several years since the humble beginnings of Camel City Flying Service, which evolved from a Piper and Stinson aircraft and parts distributorship into a local service carrier named for North Carolina's foothill region. Around this same time, another aviation company, a northern neighbor, received permission to begin airline service. For nearly 10 years, All American Aviation's famous Stinson monoplanes would swoop between 2 flag-top poles and in a single pass hook the outgoing mail and drop the incoming mail at communities that didn't even have airports. Now, on March 7, 1949, the renamed All American Airways, based in Washington, D.C., joined Piedmont Airlines in the local service airline industry. While Piedmont grew in the Mid-Atlantic and Ohio Valley regions, All American grew just to the north, an area for which it would take its new name in 1953. In the year that Erie, Cleveland, and Huntington were added, All American Airways became Allegheny Airlines. As local service airlines, many similarities existed between Piedmont and Allegheny. Fleet enhancements were needed for both in the 50s and early 60s as passenger loads increased. Allegheny added Martin 202s in 1955. Piedmont added the F-27s in 1958 and Martin 404s in 1961. Convair 440s and 540s joined Allegheny's fleet in the early 60s, while both carriers decided to retire the aging DC-3s. Spectacular growth occurred for both Piedmont and Allegheny in the early 60s. Piedmont's route mileage increased 50% in 1962. Allegheny's principal operations and maintenance base moved from Washington, D.C. to Pittsburgh. Even with the addition of larger prop jets, F-227s and YS-11s for Piedmont, and Convair 580s and F-27s for Allegheny, both carriers needed speedier, modern aircraft. In 1966, the Douglas DC-9 joined the Allegheny Airlines fleet. A year later, Piedmont leased 2 Boeing 727s while waiting on the delivery of the 737. While each airline possessed its own ingenuities, Allegheny introduced a revolutionary concept in 1967 that has since taken hold throughout the entire domestic airline industry. On November 15, 1967, the Allegheny Commuter Network was launched. Henson Airlines inaugurated the first Allegheny commuter service with 4 daily flights between Hagerstown and Baltimore. That same year, Piedmont's expanding route system and jet fleet necessitated a major facility improvement. On a rainy day in October, a new general office and maintenance hangar was dedicated in Winston-Salem. A boost in Allegheny's route system came in 1968, when the merger with Lake Central Airlines doubled the size of the airline's fleet. Another successful merger followed in 1972, when Mohawk Airlines was integrated into the Allegheny system. Piedmont's first central reservation center came online in 1971, dramatically improving passenger service and internal efficiency. Much like our Northern Friends facility changes a few years earlier, the old handwritten file card system was replaced with computer terminals. The mid-70s saw a new look for both airlines. Piedmont's YS-11s and 737s got a new paint job, a new insignia, and the word airline was dropped. A bold new look. In preparation for changes that would ultimately include a new name, Allegheny chose a contemporary look featuring 3 shades of red. (1978). The airline deregulation war ended at Capitol Hill with the passing of the Airline Deregulation Act. New forces would enter the dynamic airline industry. New airlines, stiff competition, fare wars, exciting expansion. In that year, we did not yet know where deregulation would lead us. Ultimately, many airlines would either go bankrupt or combine in their efforts in order to survive. Expansion. What exciting times. New routes, new jets, the creation of thousands of jobs. Piedmont adopted the bypass strategy, whereby our new flights were an improvement over existing service. When we inaugurated service to Denver and Miami, for example, we bypassed the large traditional connecting points and flew nonstop from important cities in the east. Allegheny added several cities: Tampa, Orlando, West Palm Beach, Birmingham, New Orleans, Raleigh-Durham, Phoenix, and Tucson. Now was the time to shake the small airline image its name portrayed. On October 28, 1979, Allegheny Airlines became USAir. While USAir expanded its Pittsburgh operation, Piedmont methodically began to increase the number of departures at Charlotte. With more online connections, each carrier realized the benefits of feeding their own routes as passenger loads and profits increased steadily with the addition of flights. While USAir continued on a steady, well-controlled growth pattern, Piedmont developed with boldness and a daring flash, each time more successful than before, much to the surprise of the rest of the industry. The Dayton hub in 1982 was to date the most aggressive single-day startup of service in the company's history. The Baltimore hub opened a year later, and for the first time ever, a certificated carrier acquired a regional subsidiary. Henson Airlines, based in Salisbury, Maryland, became the Piedmont Regional Airline. Another bold step included the Piedmont Shuttle, which in 1985 became Piedmont's famous intra-Florida jet network. USAir's expansion in the early to mid-'80s included San Antonio, Kansas City, as well as Los Angeles, San Francisco, and many more destinations. USAir introduced the 737-300 into airline service in 1983, and soon afterwards, the Dash 300 joined Piedmont's fleet. Both carriers joined the ranks of the majors, each achieving such status somewhat differently, but both quite successfully. By now, both Piedmont and USAir had proven themselves as two of the shakers in an industry reeling with escalating costs, new entrant competition, and bankruptcy. Both airlines claimed profits each year since deregulation, a feat only one other carrier could claim. As Piedmont's route network took on more long-haul destinations, we joined with other majors in the code-sharing concept. While enjoying the commuter feed was nothing new to USAir, CC Air, Jetstream International, and Brockway enhanced the synergistic effect of Piedmont's self-feeding system. Along with code sharing, consolidation became a new way for airlines to survive. Texas Air's Continental is a hybrid combination of Continental, Texas International, New York Air, Frontier, and People Express. Northwest acquired Republic. TWA bought Ozark. Delta merged with Western. American purchased AirCal. A new word was created to describe the new combination of airlines in our industry: mega carrier. In many circumstances, it meant be one or be prepared to be run over by one. Piedmont's purchase of Empire and USAir's acquisition of PSA would not assure long-term survival for either. Both had to be larger and quick. American's new eastern presence with hubs in Nashville and Raleigh-Durham, along with United's new Washington Dulles hub, contributed to the urgency. On March 9, 1987, the headlines told a story: Piedmont Airlines to merge with USAir. While both Piedmont's and USAir's executive and legal teams worked on obtaining government approval for the merger, Piedmont brought to fruition another hard-fought project. It began in July of 1986 with an application to the United States Department of Transportation for authority to begin service to London, England. Now, on June 15, 1987, Piedmont's Flight 160, a new Boeing 767 widebody, was ready for departure.
And we're about to make some history. This is a big day for the city of Charlotte, and certainly the greatest day in Piedmont Airlines history. The inaugural flight from Charlotte's Douglas International Airport, bound for London's Gatwick, will be leaving in just a few minutes.
As a renovated DC-3, painted in Piedmont's colors of old, escorted our new Boeing 767 widebody, named the Pride of Piedmont, toward the runway. We're reminded by the stark contrast between these two aircraft of just how much our industry has changed in the last 40 years. No longer are we Piedmont Aviation or All-American Airways, operating DC-3s in the North Carolina foothills or Allegheny Mountain region, each company employing less than a couple hundred employees. We're now part of the USAir Group. Our new airline will be the second largest passenger and planing airline in the free world, with over 400 jet aircraft and 40,000 people. Part of a distinct history, a proud culture with accomplishments and memories we hold dear. Piedmont Airlines, Empire, Mohawk, Lake Central, Allegheny, PSA. All these names and faces are a part of the new USAir. Together, we'll soar to new heights.